On October 17, 2011, police in Scarborough, Ontario, Canada, received an alarming call. On the other end of the line, they heard a man with a trembling voice saying that when he returned home, he found his wife underwater in the bathtub, and she was not breathing. The 911 operator asked him if he had removed the plug from the shower, to which the man responded no. Then splashing was heard. When officers arrived at the home on Marsh Road, they noticed that the woman was still in the bathtub. The husband had not managed to get her out of the water, nor had he attempted to perform cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR. The woman was taken to the nearest hospital, where she was declared dead at the age of 29. Tragically, the baby she was carrying for 20 weeks also did not survive. At first glance, everything seemed like a tragic accident, but something aroused the detectives' suspicions. The man who had made the call was a registered nurse. It didn't make sense that he couldn't help her. The situation became even more suspicious when the autopsy revealed that the woman had a large dose of lorazepam, a strong sedative, in her stomach. What could have caused a registered nurse to fail in performing life-saving measures on his own wife? Hello, welcome to the Crime Documentary Files channel. Philip Grandine was born in 1987 in Paris, Ontario, Canada. The son of Glenn and Carol Grandine and brother of Emily, he grew up in an ordinary middle-class family. From childhood, he was very interested in religion. He was passionate about the idea of listening to people and helping them with their problems. Upon reaching adulthood, he enrolled at the Toronto Baptist Seminary. After completing his studies, he began working as a pastor at the Parkland Baptist Church and later moved to the Baptist Church in Ennerdale. There, he met a young woman named Karissa Grandine, who was born on November 10, 1981, in Pasay City, Philippines. In 1994, she emigrated to Toronto with her parents, Maria Charito and Ramon Darwin, and her sister Hannah. Karissa stood out as an excellent student. After graduating from high school, she enrolled in human biology and archaeology at the University of Toronto in 2006. She earned a bachelor's degree with honors and began working for Berkeley, Canada, an insurance agency. In her free time, Karissa dedicated herself to her faith, volunteering at several Baptist churches, including Ennerdale, where everyone remarked on how gentle and kind she was. It was there that her path crossed with Philip's. The connection was immediate, united by their love for God. They were married on October 11, 2008, at Jarvis Street Baptist Church. They then moved to a small bungalow in Scarborough, Ontario. For the first 3 years, everything went smoothly. Everyone in the community noted what a good couple they made. During this time, Philip was promoted to senior pastor of the church and earned the respect of those around him. Just when they thought things couldn't get any better, in 2011, they received wonderful news. Karissa was pregnant. They were so overjoyed that they told all their neighbors and the church community. But behind closed doors, the situation was very different. During that year, the couple's relationship began to deteriorate. One day, Philip decided to call Stephen Hadfield, a pastor they both knew, and asked him to provide them with marriage counseling services. Stephen accepted willingly and was happy to help. During the first session, Philip admitted something terrible. He was having a physical affair. Philip confessed that he was involved with Eileen Florentino, a parishioner who attended the same church. Karissa had talked to Eileen on several occasions and even considered her a friend. The situation was deeply painful. Philip had not only broken his wedding vows, but also violated the mandate of the gospel by having an affair with a woman he was supposed to counsel. As if this were not enough, Philip also admitted to consuming adult films, which was questionable for the religion they both practiced. Despite everything, Karissa was willing to forgive her husband. She wanted the child she was expecting to be born into a happy family. Stephen made a condition for continuing therapy. Philip had to give up his lover and adult videos. Philip agreed without hesitation, determined to do everything possible to save his marriage. They continued to meet with Stephen every Thursday night. However, after several meetings, Stephen noticed that the situation was more complicated than it seemed. Philip had an addiction to adult videos. Stephen told him that if he wanted to rid himself of his improper desires, he needed to step down as pastor of Ennerdale and change churches to avoid encountering his lover. Philip was initially resistant, but eventually accepted the advice. Since he was a registered nurse, he quickly found a new job at a nursing home, where he was responsible for distributing medications. Although Philip seemed interested in improving his relationship with his wife during therapy sessions, his behavior at home told a different story. Karissa had to install a filter on their computer to prevent him from watching the videos. But that was not all. After just a few weeks, Philip resumed his affair with Eileen. Karissa quickly realized this and decided to confront him during a session with Stephen. Philip again promised to change, and Karissa once again believed him. However, she soon had to worry about even more serious problems, making it difficult to trust her husband's words. On October 14, 2011, Karissa was at home, drinking a smoothie that Philip had prepared for her. She began experiencing a series of unexplained symptoms, feeling very dizzy, fatigued, and sweating a lot. Her husband called St. Michael's Hospital to come pick her up. She arrived at the facility nauseated, lethargic, and very weak. They quickly took her to the emergency room. When they performed toxicological tests, they discovered traces of lorazepam, a strong anxiolytic known under the brand name Ativan, in her system. This completely shocked the doctor, since that medication should not be consumed by pregnant women. When told the news, Karissa denied taking any pills. Something didn't add up. After spending the night under evaluation, her symptoms disappeared and she was discharged. She was prescribed some medications along with an antibiotic, but the medicine did not work due to a pre-existing liver problem. She left the hospital without suspecting that it was the beginning of the end. On October 17th, Ontario Emergency Services received an emergency call from Philip. Completely upset, he asked them to come to his house in Scarborough. He said that when he returned from jogging around the neighborhood, he found his wife underwater in the bathtub and that she was not breathing. As officers headed to the home, the 911 operator gave some instructions to Philip to try to save Karissa's life. They ordered him to uncover the tub and remove his wife's body so he could perform CPR. Philip replied that he did not know how to perform CPR and preferred to wait for the paramedics. He also said he couldn't get Karissa out of the tub because she was slipping. Concerned about Philip's ineffectiveness, the operator ordered him to try to calm down and put towels under his wife's arms to support her. After a few minutes, Philip returned to the phone, breathing heavily. He stated that he had not been able to do it, as every time he grabbed Karissa, her body slipped again and hit the wall. The operator began to get impatient and could hear the sound of water. It was clear that Philip hadn't even tried to speed up his efforts. The operator had instructed him to remove the plug from the bathtub. When the paramedics arrived at the home, they saw Karissa still lying underwater. She was taken to the nearest hospital where she was declared dead. The baby in her womb at 20 weeks was also dead. Although the cause of death was drowning, the autopsy revealed an extremely striking fact. Karissa had lorazepam in her system, the same sedative that had caused her problems 3 days earlier. Philip was arrested immediately, as the phone call made it clear that he had done nothing to save the lives of his wife and his future child. However, they did not have enough evidence to hold him. After 2 hours of interrogation, he was released. From then on, they didn't lose sight of him. The day after Karissa's death, Philip called Stephen to meet him at a coffee shop to discuss his wife's funeral arrangements. They met at a Tim Hortons. During the conversation, Stephen suggested that Philip buy a double plot in the cemetery, usually intended for couples. Philip hesitated. Finally, he answered something unexpected. He didn't want to buy it because he might remarry. Stephen found this completely out of character. He couldn't believe that Philip was already thinking about dating other people when Karissa had passed away just a day earlier. That same week, Stephen called Philip to ask how he was feeling and took the opportunity to confront him about Eileen. He wanted to know if Philip had told her about his wife's death. Philip replied that under no circumstances should she know, as he feared it would affect her. This response made Stephen very angry, not only because the former pastor seemed more concerned about his lover, but also because Stephen already knew that Eileen was aware of the situation. However, Philip again denied having spoken to his lover after his wife's death. His lies continued to pile up. To close the conversation, Stephen asked him if he was still in love with Eileen, to which Philip replied that his feelings for her had not changed. The following week, news of the situation spread through the community with disturbing tranquility. Philip didn't seem to be hurt by Karissa's passing. While the Darwins were focused on making donations in their daughter's memory to Children's Evangelism Canada, Philip was more interested in continuing his relationship with his lover. The funeral was held on October 27th at the Jarvis Street Baptist Church. Philip attended but was not well received. By then, everyone suspected that he had been responsible for his wife's death. The fact that the police did not seem to be doing anything to clarify the case caused unrest in the town until the evidence finally arrived. Detectives managed to access Philip's computer history. They discovered that on October 10th, he had used his WikiHow account to ask a series of disturbing questions. First, he asked if 100 grams of Ativan would be fatal. A minute later, he asked if someone could die from 100 grams of lorazepam. But that was not all. At 10 p.m. on October 17th, 40 minutes before Karissa died, Philip removed the filter that prohibited him from visiting adult sites. It was clear that he had not gone jogging and that he was in the house when his wife took a bath. They also obtained his cell phone records. Between 6 in the morning and 5 in the afternoon of that day, Philip had exchanged 275 text messages with Eileen. Agents concluded that Philip had given lorazepam to Karissa. As soon as she was defenseless, he let her drown, causing her death. The reason was clear. He wanted to end his marriage to start a new life with his lover and satisfy his addiction to adult films. They speculated that Philip had obtained the sedative at the nursing home where he worked as a nurse. He had probably drugged Karissa with a lower dose 3 days before she died. This would have served as a sinister simulation of the crime, since it only resulted in her being admitted to the hospital. In May 2012, Philip was charged with first-degree murder, pleading not guilty and stating that his wife had accidentally drowned. During a press conference, authorities stated that there was no direct evidence of murder at the hospital. There was no single piece of evidence that led to the arrest, but rather a collection of clues that pointed to Philip as the murderer. From then on, a long and tortuous judicial process began. The first hearing took place in 2014, 2 years after the formal accusation against the former pastor. It included the testimonies of several key people. Among them were Karissa's primary doctor, who had been treating her since 2012, and her obstetrician. Both stated that they had never prescribed lorazepam. The only certainty in the case was that traces of this sedative had been found in the young woman's body. The first time was the day she went to the hospital completely disoriented, and the second time was at the autopsy. The prosecutor accused Philip of supplying it to take her life. Also taking the stand was Stephen, who testified that during his final counseling sessions with the couple, the former pastor appeared to be under the influence of lorazepam, as he spoke with difficulty, did not walk well, and had trouble keeping his eyes open. This fit with the theory that the man had stolen the medication from the nursing home where he worked. Finally, Eileen testified. She stated that Philip had spoken with her on his cell phone half an hour before the discovery of Karissa's body in the bathtub. That same night, after attending the interrogation at the police station, the man had come to her house to have intimate relations. However, she stressed that although he joked about starting a new life together, he never talked about carrying out any plan to get rid of his wife. The defense, for its part, alleged that Karissa had fallen into a deep depression after learning of her husband's affair and had probably taken the medication to end her life. While there was no evidence to support this theory, the prosecution also faced challenges. They needed to prove that Philip had given Karissa the lorazepam and allowed her to bathe alone, despite being under the influence of a strong sedative. In January 2015, the jury reached a verdict. Philip was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 15 years in prison. Karissa's family felt a sense of relief, thinking they could finally rest in peace. However, Philip was not willing to accept imprisonment so easily. The defense appealed the sentence. The Ontario Court of Appeal found that the judge had made an error in answering a jury question, and the verdict was overturned. A new trial was ordered, but only on the charge of involuntary manslaughter. This meant that prosecutors were prohibited from alleging that Philip had intended to murder his wife. He awaited this new process while free. In February 2019, he was again convicted of involuntary manslaughter. However, the defense once again contested the sentence and filed appeals. They argued that the trial judge had made a mistake by telling the jury that Philip knew his wife had taken a sedative but failed to take steps to ensure her safety. They also claimed that the inclusion of his computer searches was unnecessary. The defense also stated that the sentence was a violation of the law, arguing that the punishment was excessive for the charge of involuntary manslaughter. In January 2020, the court again rejected the appeal, stating that the 15-year sentence was appropriate and reasonable. They concluded that Philip was hostile toward his wife and had administered the drug to incapacitate her. They also said that his actions were planned, premeditated, diabolical, and violent. This was supported by the fact that he had given her lorazepam in the days before the murder to observe its effects. Philip showed no remorse upon hearing these words. He appealed the sentence again and requested bail to await his third trial, which was granted. The outlook was bleak. It seemed that the Darvin family would never get justice. On Monday, May 9, 2022, almost a decade after the crime, the Ontario Superior Court made a final decision. Judge Faye McWatt rejected the defense's argument that Karissa had taken the substance herself because she was depressed over her husband's infidelity. She determined that there was no error in the sentence and that it was appropriate. There was enough evidence for the jury to conclude that Philip knew Karissa had taken lorazepam and that he was criminally negligent in leaving her alone in the bathroom. This was especially damning, considering that he was a certified nurse and should have known the effects of the sedative. She described the case as unusual and stated that Philip's behavior was closer to murder than most manslaughter cases. She expressed that by committing this crime, the former pastor had subjected his wife to physical and emotional violence. She emphasized that being sedated, Karissa had no way to defend herself. Philip did not testify in any of the trials against him. His silence spoke volumes. He was transferred to Kingston Federal Penitentiary to serve his 15-year sentence. The Darvin family felt a great sense of liberation and comfort, knowing that Karissa's killer was finally behind bars. However, nothing could bring the young woman back to life, nor could it return the time lost in the tortuous judicial process. This is the case story for today. Do you think the 15-year prison sentence for Philip Grandine is justified? Please let us know in the comments below this video. Thank you, and see you in the next case.